anything in our strategic, you won't see a separate part of the plan for conservation, for education, for advocacy. We have 3 overarching goals, and for each of those goals to be successful, we need conservation, education, and advocacy. So, let me just say, so as I mentioned, we are a statewide organization. That does not mean that we do all of the same things across all of the parts of the state. This map shows you, it's a little hard to see because I think Abbott's Mills at the bottom is almost getting blocked by that bar, but you can see that 3 of our sites are very close in the northernmost part of the state, and then we have one that is in Sussex County that's just below the border with Kent County there. So when it comes to land management, you know, the on-the-ground things that we do, we're obviously not having the same presence statewide, but we do advocacy statewide. We do education programs statewide. We work with school districts across the state. We do programs in schools as well as at our sites, but obviously when it comes to our sites, we do have some focal areas there. We have about 40 staff across the state and working across these different sites, and the majority of them are at our Ashland Nature Center, which is our headquarters in Metro now. So, diving into our plan, what do? Well, one of our goal areas is healthy and resilient, and this is really aiming at having healthy, plentiful ecosystems and communities that host a diversity of life that are resilient to changing conditions. So this goal area really leans into a long history of our organization in land protection, protection of natural areas. We literally were part of the formation of the state's natural areas program and the open space program. So those are things that are deeply rooted in the history of our organization. And in this plan in particular, articulates the thinking around that one of the most important things we need to do in order to reduce the worst impacts of climate change is to ensure that these places are as plentiful and as healthy as they can possibly be, because they can both help to mitigate those impacts and help us adapt to those impacts. So that's a big part of it. But in this part of our plan and what we do, our objectives for protecting and restoring using best practices, also for advocating for and modeling the best stewardship practices, and that those are the kinds of things that we do a lot of that at our sites, particularly the modeling part, not necessarily the promoting the practices part. That part we can do, you know, across larger areas. So some recent things that we have done, and that somebody who's actually worked with the center on, have been around advocating for land conservation funding. We're always very active in that, and starting to get a little more active in that at the county level. In Newcastle County, they have a new program for open space funding. That would be something that would be great to see happen across the state. We also have been really focused in the last couple of years of bringing more people for programs back to our sites. We had a lot of people utilize our sites during COVID, but not a lot of formal programming because we just couldn't do that. So really rebuilding those programs has been a big focus, and using the sites as those learning, demonstrating kind of tools. We also have a huge focus on utilizing native plants and native plants as part of native ecosystems. So this time of year we have a big native plant sale that's coming up next weekend. And the main part of that is at our Coverdale Farm Preserve. But we also this year are going to have a smaller sale at Abbott's Mill. So if you're looking for native plants next Saturday, not this coming Saturday, but Saturday after May 4th, we are going to have some plants for sale at Abbott's Mill. And one of our sites is a regenerative farm. So we grow some native plants there, but we also grow over 500,000. We grow them using organic and regenerative practices and demonstrating how that can be done. Over 500,000 vegetables, herbs, flowers, and so forth at Coverdale Farm. We also plant usually somewhere around 2,000 trees every year at our various sites, including we do a big reforestation partnership project with the Newcastle County at Middle Run. And then through our native plant sale and all the various community projects that we do, we put usually about 7,000 or more native plants into the ground out in the community somewhere. I think we're actually going to blow that number out of the water this year with all of the projects, local community pollinator garden type projects that we have going on right now, particularly in the Wilmington area. We also care for about over 2,000 acres of land, not just our sites, but on properties around our sites, and working with different partners in some other places too. So, and that's a pretty small portion of the over about 120,000 acres that we've been part of preserving. So one of the things we do is work with the state or other entities to advocate for important natural areas to be preserved, whether they're our sites or not our sites. So another big overarching goal of our plan and our work is inform and engage. And the goal is to have an environmentally literate, diverse community of people who understands the challenges, the environmental challenges that we're facing, and are engaged in finding and supporting solutions to those. So this also recognizes our very deep, fairly well-known in some parts, experience with hands-on programming, especially for children, and for the importance of those programs for raising not just awareness, but also care and stewardship for the environment, and ultimately agency, so that people know what kinds of actions they can take in their own lives. A few of the things that we have been doing recently to lay the groundwork for what's in the plan about this is we have been really expanding our work, our conservation work in urban areas, trying to reach more urban folks, particularly in Wilmington, where we have our DuPont Environmental Education Center on the riverfront there, but also looking to replicate some of what we're doing there in the Milford area, working from our Abbott's Mill Preserve. So overall, in the last year, our program and event offerings have increased about 40%. And if you look at over the last 2 years, they're up by over 86%. Now that's because the years before that were COVID years, so that's part of the really big building back the programs, getting people back into programs at our sites, in the schools. We also have been very focused on trying to make our programs more accessible to a variety of different audiences, and so we've been building our scholarship program. A number of our programs, we do charge fees for them, and that's the way that we're able to support them. But for example, our school programs, the fees that we charge are only about half of what the cost is of delivering those programs. So the other half is supported by donations, grants, all the different types of support we get as a nonprofit organization. And we have several different scholarship plans set up so that we can enable some children who maybe wouldn't otherwise be able to do those programs, be able to. All in all, we are getting close to hitting 100,000 people that we reach every year through our sites and the programs and various things that we do. And over 37,000 of those are program and event participants. So they're people who register for organized things that we're doing. And the vast majority of those are children. So we do a lot of programs for children. We have about 25,000 participants in school and group programs every year. We also have a very active summer camp program, about 2,000 people, 2,000 children a year participate in our summer camp. So the third goal area in our strategic plan is a little more inward looking. It's about our organization and wanting to be dynamic and sustainable, and the goal is to have a compelling organization that serves as a model, as a change agent, and a viable source of mutual support for natural areas and communities. So this one, as I said, is a little bit more inward looking than outward, but it's actually a really important one for us right now because we have gone through a number of years of a lot of transition between COVID, which was transitioning away from the sites and to home, and then back to the sites and back to programming, and then we've also had a number of leadership transitions, including mine coming on about 2 years ago. So we are, our aim is to have a strong and diverse staff and board, and really we're looking at really trying to improve a lot of our systems and to sharpen and focus our branding and messaging and get our work out there a little bit more. We've been a little bit quiet in the last few years for a variety of reasons. Importantly, maybe for the center, our Abbott's Mill Nature Center and the Abbott's Mill site and our presence in Sussex County has been pretty quiet in the last several years. Part of that was just due to COVID. Part of that is that we actually were without a site director at that site for about a year. So we are definitely looking at ramping programs back up at Abbott's now and doing some new things there and really utilizing that also as a site where we can do more with Milford and really more throughout that watershed. And that really is kind of our hub for Kent and Sussex counties, with all our Newcastle County areas also being a little bit like the other part of Kent County and then Newcastle. And recently, some of the things that we've been doing in addition to the strategic plan, which is really going to be our blueprint for the next 3 to 4 years, we also have been investing quite a bit in our internal systems, whether it's HR or financial or all of the things that keep our organization going. And part of the aim of that too is that we have traditionally not been as heavily focused on grant funding and particularly government grant funding. So certainly compared to an organization like the Delaware Inland Bays. And so that is an area, and I think you all know that there are a lot of government grant funding opportunities out there right now. And so we're starting to take advantage of some of those. And one of our aims is, our focus is Delaware, and we want to get as much federal regional funding to Delaware as we possibly can, not just for our organization, but for all of the kinds of work that we do as well. So we've been very active in regional coalitions like the Coalition for the Delaware River Watershed and the Choose Clean Water for the Chesapeake Bay, those kinds of things to make sure that Delaware is staying as part of that focus, especially around bringing resources here. So we do have a couple new federal grant funded projects happening this year, and we've got 4 different multi-year grant proposals that we put in just within the last 6 months that we're hoping will come to fruition next year and then the future years that this plan will be covering. One of those is that we have some state support for and are in the process of trying to get some more regional federal support for, is to do some work looking at conservation priorities in the Mississippian watershed. Because we have Abbott's Mill is in the headwaters area of the Mississippian, and then we have Milford kind of in the middle of the watershed. And we are partners with Milford for school programs and education programs on their river walk and partnering with those kinds of things. And then we work with Slaughter Beach on the Bay Shore, where we have a tract called the Marble Tract that is 100 and some acres that's adjacent to Fish and Wildlife land. That's all salt marsh, and it's got a public boardwalk there, and we have a partnership with Slaughter Beach where people have access to go. You can go there at any time, but we also do some programming there, and we're connected in with some of the horseshoe crab surveys and things like that that happen on Slaughter Beach. So really trying to look more holistically at the Mississippian watershed and how those 3 kind of hubs are connected, and whether we can better connect them through, whether it's through water trails, through river restoration efforts, through the natural areas that are there, through maybe some land conservation work in that area. So really trying to build that out in the future. So those are the 3 kind of big areas of the work that we do, framed, with this new strategic plan that we have. We are really excited about the new plan, and also that it's coming at a time where it's actually our 60th anniversary this year. So we have a whole suite of activities and programs that are really focused on, we're looking back at the 60th anniversary and some of these areas and thinking about, well, what are our big successes and accomplishments, and things like the Clean Water Campaign and land protection work that we've done, and a lot of things that we have partnered with the center on, but then also pairing those with, and we have a lot more to do. So, and thinking about in the plan, what are the things coming up that we need to be more focused on. So this year we have some different themes. Every 2 months, we're going to be focusing on promoting some of our work with different themes. Right now, we're in sort of the plants and biodiversity theme with our plant sale. Early summer, we're going to move into clean water, and we have some events around clean water. Later in the summer, we're focusing on birds and bees and insects and pollinators and everything that flies in probably August, September. And then in the fall, we'll move into thinking about food and wellness and really focusing on the farm and the work that we do there. And then wrapping up the year with a focus on land and natural areas. And we do have some things kind of Abbott's towards the end of that part, including a holly celebration. And I don't know how many folks know that Milton was once the holly-free capital of the country, the world. I don't know, like it was like a big place to go for holly wreaths. So, yeah, so we're going to be doing a little holiday celebration at Abbotsville at the end of the year around that. So, in terms of opportunities to partner with the center, I think we have done a lot of successful partnering. My understanding, and this is an area that I'm still learning about, but that a lot of the partnering we've done has been around advocacy. I know that the Clean Water Campaign, the Delaware Land Protection Coalition are things that both our organizations are super active in, and we've been able to support each other on. And I think those have been really fruitful because of, multiple organizations coming together and acting on those. And those will not be going away for us. Those are long-term priorities that will probably forever be priorities for us as an organization. Maybe some of the things that we're looking about doing more on in the future in terms of advocacy would be around climate change and environmental justice, are two issues that are woven throughout our entire plan. And we made a conscious effort to say that these are really big, I say emerging. We've known about them for a while, but in terms of really weaving them into our work and our priorities, those are big future focus for us. And right now that looks like we're, advocating for use of renewables, including offshore wind. So that's a big kind of focus for us right now around climate change, but also freshwater wetlands protections, which kind of fits into multiple categories, but it's a big one for us too. I think there probably could be other opportunities to work together. One of the examples I'll give is that the state has recently put a new Modus tower out near Abbotsville, which is a radio tower that allows us to tag and track birds. We already have a Modus tower at the Peterson Urban Wildlife Refuge, which is where our DuPont Environmental Education Center is, and then there's another tower, and has been for quite a while, up at the Bucktoe Creek Preserve, which is just a few minutes away from National Nature Center. So we have been for a while doing bird conservation work, using monitoring, not just using the radio tags and that kind of monitoring, but also monitoring nest boxes and monitoring some of our sites for bird conservation. So we're looking forward to doing more of that down, a little bit further down in the state now that the Modus Tower is out at Abbott's. We do have an ornithologist on staff who leads that work for us, and a number of our staff are highly skilled birders, way more than me. So, so the center has an interest in doing some of that kind of science, and there's a lot of volunteer monitoring, volunteer engagement involved in that. Birds are have been one of our most successful ways of bringing people in and getting them interested about all of the other things that we do. So it's also been a great outreach tool for us. So there might be some opportunity for us to work more on those kinds of things. And then we have always been very involved in advocacy in Newcastle County, where more of our sites are, but I think in terms of the future and certainly looking at the growth and trying to have, there's a lot of discussion right now about growth patterns and trying to have healthier land use patterns. I think certainly this more southern part of the state where a lot of that growth is happening, a lot of the population growth and what that's doing to some of the natural systems makes that a natural kind of forward-looking place for us to be looking in terms of local advocacy. And that's certainly something that Mark Nardone is our director of advocacy, and I know that he has had many conversations with Christoph about those issues and our organizations working together on that. So that's all. Oh, I have one more thing. We are, this year, we are part of Dogfish Head's Beer and Benevolence program, and we're going to be working with them on beer. And we're going to be hosting 2 nights to benefit Delaware Nature Society at the restaurant in August. So it's August 7th and August 21st. So let your friends and neighbors and local contacts know to come out to Dogfish Head. That's already a pretty busy time for them, so we're hoping that will be a great resource for us. They've been great about coming and being part of some of our volunteer projects, and we worked with them for years of them donating beer for our events. But this is the first time in a long time. We did many years ago to a beer with them, but this is the first time in a long time, so we're really excited about that. And I did bring a couple of things with me. I have, and I can just leave one pager that has QR codes that if you wanted to actually see our strategic plan, for all of the anniversary activities that we have. Our native plant sale catalog, which has a full listing of all the plants that will be for sale. Not all of these will probably be at Abbott's, but we will have all of these at Coverdale next weekend. And we have these little coasters for the 60th anniversary. So I brought some of these and I can use them for folks who want to. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Your telemetry studies know the birds, but are you coordinating with places outstate, like taking the point where they have to do some similar with butterflies and birds? Or are you just kind of being in the state exclusively?
We are doing some coordination. We probably could do more, especially with folks like Cape May, because we have not, some of those bird conservation efforts in the past have been more upstate. So I know we're actively involved with Willistown Conservation Trust and some of the folks kind of north of us. Now that we're able to do some more of that down in this part of the state, I think building some more of those kind of collaborations is one of the things that we would like to do.
So I think when I was there for my years, one of the things they were trying to do is to expand their network, and it's pretty expensive. So if you have, something where you can monitor these things, the more network, you can monitor those birds as they migrate across the country.
Yeah, the Notice network you can tap into like the whole broader, it's definitely not like, it really isn't all that much use to just have one tower or even a couple. Really, the thing is you can tap into the whole network of it, and then you can see if the birds or even like, you even tag butterflies.
Yeah.
You can see they'll get picked up by the other towers, and that's where you can really see like where they're going. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Is it Modus, M-O-D-U-S?
It's M-O-T-U-S.
T, okay, sorry.
And I don't know what that stands for.
Thank you.
Yeah. Questions?
Are there any questions in the room? Any online?
I'll make one statement. I've been familiar with this organization for many, many decades, and I've toured built many camps. We've been many times walking there, and it's a fantastic facility, fantastic organization. So one thing I understood is why it wasn't more recognized regionally, not just with the state. It's always there, it's always been quiet, so.
Yeah, I mean, we've always been focused on Delaware, and the organization was originally created as the Delaware Nature Education Society. So education was the first thing we do. It still is, if you look at all our programs, it still is the biggest thing that we do. But our conservation work and our advocacy work probably have been just as much in the, kind of in the limelight. And our advocacy work is probably the most statewide, because we do a lot of statewide advocacy on environmental issues, although we are tied into a lot of that the regional coalition work too. And so have been active on things like getting the Delaware River Basin Conservation Fund going, growing, and which our delegates in Delaware have been leaders in. So that's been, trying to get more of those kinds of resources to Delaware. Yeah.
How have you been, I know that you had mentioned supporting US wind, and that's been like a really big hot topic in the Delaware, Maryland area. How are you navigating that realm and kind of dealing with community members who have very strong opposition to US wind? Because I think that's something that a lot of organizations are dealing with right now, and I just want to know like how you're kind of going about that.
So the first thing I would say is that we are not supporting US wind.
Oh,
I'm very careful to say that we do not support any specific project. We support the development of renewables, and we support the development of offshore wind as a critical part of that, because we cannot meet the climate action goals that the state has without it. And so that's like our very first thing, right? Like, first, it's not about any specific project. Yeah, it's been tough, and we did recently, and I'd be happy to make it available to anyone who wants to see it, but we did recently get our board to approve our policy statement on offshore wind and exactly what, to be very clear about what we are supporting, and it's just that, one of the things I didn't mention, and probably should have, because we definitely have leaned into this relationship and, in the realm of offshore wind, is that we are the state affiliate for the National Wildlife Federation. And so we work very closely with they have some policy experts specifically completely dedicated to wind, renewables, offshore wind. And so we're able to kind of tap into their expertise. And that's been particularly helpful, like even internally with our own stakeholders who have concerns about birds and wildlife and marine mammals, and so it's been very helpful to tap into NWF, which has made some pretty strong statements, like, we are the nation's wildlife people, and we are saying that the biggest threat to our wildlife is the impact of climate change. So they and we believe strongly that it's gonna be just as important for us to advocate for responsible development, so when there are developments happening, that we may be on, we may be asking the tough questions of the developers about, well, what are you doing about this and this and this and this, but we support having offshore wind because we know we need it, and that really is the biggest threat to wildlife. So that's been helpful for us and might be something to tap into, and they have some great resources, studies, to be able to say, no, the people who are our best experts on wildlife are saying this is important, which is not to say it doesn't have impacts, but we just need to focus on doing it in a way that can have the least impacts as possible.
Thank you, Jen. If you could share that policy statement, I think that would be helpful for the center to see that and compare it to where they're sitting right now with that situation as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. That was just approved in our February board meeting, so it is relatively new. It is because we realized that we needed to make sure that we were being really transparent and strong internally with knowing this is what we're all agreeing that we can say about this, and will, because it is a little bit thorny issue.
Thank you. In the interest of, is there conversation happening?
Yeah, I had one other question, on the same vein as growth. So there's just tremendous rampant growth in Sussex County, and I was just wondering what you guys are, what your involvement is, and I know you've touched on some of that, but how much effort are you putting into better planning, less congestion?
Yeah. So there is a small group of folks who have been meeting and having conversations, and Mark Nardone, our advocacy director, has been really our lead person on that. I would be very surprised if Christoph or someone from the center hasn't been part of those conversations. But I haven't been in many of them myself, but we do have an advocacy committee. And so some of those conversations have been brought to our committee about, how can we, leadership of conservation organizations and others, like that is an issue that I think we have, strong support from like the healthcare community and from others who really care about how things are getting developed. Really starting to have some conversations about what would it look like to take a serious look at how to, overhaul the way we do land use and recognition that it may not be working for some things. So, but it's a big conversation, and we're just starting to have it. In the meantime, I think, there have been some times where Mark has weighed in on, specific local issues. It's a little tough for us to, we can't weigh in on every local, we definitely can't weigh in on every local development issue, but if there is, an impact, a broader resource impact or precedent impact or something like that, it definitely can be something that we have sometimes. So yeah, hopefully we'll have to come on that. There's a lot of discussion about that right now, about what it would look like to. And really, I think, we may have an opportunity with elections and new leadership and, to just make sure that that's part of the conversation, right? Because it is really a state issue, statewide issue with different implications in different places, maybe more so than in others.
Thank you, Jen. I'm going to need to keep moving us along in the interest of time, so thank you so much. I also want to just briefly say that I know we really have not planned an actual break. So for the folks who are online, I know it's easy for you to get up and walk away and give yourself a bathroom break, but please, the folks in the room, please try to do that for yourself as well, if and when needed. Hopefully afterwards, there'll be time for those of you in the room to continue to network and connect with each other. But next, I'd like to invite Keith Fisher, who is the Director of Conservation with the Nature Conservancy, to share with us. Welcome, Keith.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Hear me okay?
We can.
All right, let me just seeing it correctly now in presentation mode?
It looks good.
All right, great, thank you. Well, I think to start, I'd just like to give a brief introduction to the Nature Conservancy for those that aren't familiar, just kind of an overall introduction, and then get into some of the work that we are doing in Delaware. The Nature Conservancy is a global international organization with a mission really to conserve the lands and waters on which all life depends. And we work in all 50 US states and 77 countries around the globe. Our work, the foundation of our work is really what the Nature Conservancy calls our 2030 goals, which are really focused in on the dual crises of climate change and biodiversity loss. So that forms the foundation of all of the work we do. And here in Pennsylvania and Delaware, which happens to be a combined chapter, our work that we do across that geography really utilizes that foundation, and the work we do supports the Nature Conservancy's 2030 goals. So here you can see we have kind of a broad cross section of conservation work across Pennsylvania and Delaware, in Appalachian forests, in freshwater, in cities, and energy, and our Delaware coasts and bays, and all of that kind of clearly connected to climate. And our work is both on the ground and policy, which I'll talk a little bit about as well. One of the things the Conservancy has been doing for a long time now, and we're well known for, is our land protection work. And this shows the geography that we are interested in across Pennsylvania and Delaware. It shows a map of our preserves and across that geography. And today, the Conservancy across Pennsylvania and Delaware is protected at almost 135,000 acres. And we own and manage 32 preserves across that geography, of which 6 sit in Delaware. Almost all of them are in Sussex County. One of them is right on the Kent-Sussex line. We also have 9 easements, and our preserves total about 5,000, a little over 5,000 acres in Delaware, and a little over 1,500 acres of easements that we currently hold in Delaware. We've protected a total of 31,000 acres in Delaware so far. So moving a little bit into our work, a big body of our work is around our preserves, and it really is utilizing preserves as a platform for us to demonstrate the science behind our work, the practices that we employ, and use those to influence practitioners, decision makers, and the public. And our focus is really on managing for resilience. It's kind of bringing together the climate issues and the biodiversity issues that we face, and managing in a way that helps biodiversity adapt and remain resilient in the face of a changing climate. So in Delaware, we're really focused on, restoring and maintaining the diversity of habitats that historically occurred in the Delmarva coastal plain. There's a broad range that we're really focused on our preserves, ranging from kind of xeric habitats, pine oak woodlands, all the way down to salt marsh or Atlantic white cedar swamps. And we employ a number of management strategies across our preserves. depending on where they sit and what the particular issues are. And just as a few examples, at our Pemberton Forest Preserve, we happen to have, a lot of that was formerly pine plantation. So we are actively involved in silvicultural activities to reduce the density of planted pines, try to restore a more diverse overstory. And part of that is at very active use of prescribed fire. And it is one of our main techniques that we use in Pemberton to try to restore a more oak woodland or oak pine savanna type habitat with more diverse understory. When we look at our McCabe Preserve, one of the chief issues there happened to be, conversion to agriculture. So a big part of our work at our McCabe Preserve has been around restoring those agricultural fields back to forests. So a lot of tree planting. We do some prescribed fire here as well. We also do a lot of management and control of invasive species as we work to restore those forest types, those natural forest types. And then the last one I'll point out is our Milford Neck Preserve, which is right on the Kent-Sussex line. We own a little over 2,800 acres that ranges from beach dune system along the Delaware Bay all the way through the range of coastal marshes and ecotones up into maritime hammock. So it really gives us a platform to think about how we adjust to sea level rise, how we adjust to a change in climate, and how we maintain those coastal ecosystems, really critical and important coastal ecosystems in place. So it's a place for us where one of our biggest strategies in Delaware that we are focused on touches down. So there we're really thinking about, coastal restoration and monitoring. It does have former ag fields on it. So we're using those ag fields to look at issues around marsh migration, how we do that the best, how we employ practices, implementing monitoring and research on that, how we look at saltwater intrusion and inundation, and all of the factors that are involved become a piece of that. So it's really an important piece of property for us. And that kind of moves me into the next piece, probably the biggest body of our work in Delaware is really focused on the implications of sea level rise. And everybody in this room is very familiar with this. We know it's coming. We know it's already happening. But we're really trying to look into the future, think about what those projections will look like on the ground, and how do we position. We hear a lot about marsh migration, but we're trying to think about the full range of coastal ecosystems, particularly along the Delaware Bay. So how do we set the stage for that full range of coastal ecosystems from beach dune to maritime hammock to be able to adjust in the face of a changing climate? Excuse me. And some of the, the big issues or impacts that we're really focused on are, there is a big push in development, particularly in Sussex County. How do we adjust to that? We know that this is a main barrier or a main mechanism to protect many of those frontline communities that sit up and down the bayshore. So not only is it about how do we protect those natural systems, but it's how do we use those natural systems as a solution to help communities, human communities, adjust to and remain resilient in the face of a changing climate. Back in 2017, the Nature Conservancy went through a process where we evaluated over 10,000 sites across kind of the Northeast, from Maine to Delaware, looking at coastal sites to determine which of those coastal ecosystems, particularly marshes, had the ability to remain mostly resilient in the face of changing climate. And resilience was based in large part on the ability for those systems to be able to move. In other words, there wasn't already hard infrastructure in place that was penning them in. And there was space for them to be able to move. And we can see on this map that a lot of the bayshore along the Delaware Bay, both on the New Jersey and the Delaware side, were highlighted in this analysis. Particularly, we know the most about Delaware in our business unit. That's the area we focus on. And we know that there is space in a majority of that for those ecosystems to move. So a big part of our work is really focused on setting the stage and then beginning to implement strategies that will help those coastal ecosystems adapt. Our goals really for that, you know, by 2030, we would like to see 50% of Delaware's resilient coastal habitats have the space to shift inland. So that's about employing various tactics. You know, we do a lot of land protection work. That's part of it. Part of it is working with our agricultural community, because a lot of that is agriculture up and down there. So it's really trying to identify the best places and the best strategies to utilize in order to allow those systems to adapt. And then the second piece there is really getting at those frontline communities that I talked about. How do we make sure that these at-risk communities are positioned to utilize available sources of funding, particularly for natural infrastructure that will help them adapt to sea level rise? And right now, we're through the end of this year, we're going through a spatial roadmap, kind of an analysis process, working with multiple partners. We actually have our workshop Monday. I'll be down in Delaware on Monday because we have a second workshop in this. And it's really about trying to identify the places, the best places, and the strategies where we should focus our efforts to increase the resilience of those coastal ecosystems. Where do we start and where do we continue? Building the capacity and awareness and support for nature-based solutions, helping those communities understand the importance of those marshes, the critical nature of those marshes to protecting, to making them more resilient. And then it's awfully easy to build a plan and let it sit on the shelf. So how do we then develop a coalition of partners that is committed to using that plan to guide, you know, local and collective resiliency efforts? So that is a big focus of our work right now, and expecting that at the end of this and at the start of the calendar year 25, we'll be moving hopefully into implementation stages. And the last thing that I will touch on that the Conservancy is focused on in Delaware is a number of policy issues. Many of those are in support of what we just talked about with coastal ecosystems, but there are some that, while they're in support, you know, address other issues or other areas of the state. Particularly, the first one there is the freshwater wetlands permit bill. We're working with partners and legislators to really to respond to the Supreme Court Sackett decision and the loss of wetland protection in Delaware, non-tidal wetland protection. How do we get adequate legislation and administrative rules in place to ensure protection of wetlands throughout Delaware? Comprehensive planning and mapping. You know, we're not going to be able to buy our way out of the problem. We're going to have to do it through multiple strategies and multiple avenues. How do we build a coalition of partners and ownership by counties of part of the problem, recognizing that things are going to change? And how do we keep communities out of risk through our comprehensive planning and zoning efforts? We have a FEMA BRIC grant that's really looking at, it is getting at, in part, looking at vulnerable communities by socio-ecological factors, and in part about statewide building codes. And one of the issues there is that many of the communities in Delaware have a difficult time accessing funding because they lose points due to the fact that Delaware does not have a statewide building code. So if we have a statewide building code, it actually makes FEMA grant funds, BRIC funds in particular, more available to some of these communities. And then some of the others are protections for, you know, lands, clean water, air, and wildlife that we're working on. And we're also working to kind of build we're part of the Delaware Land Protection Coalition, or many of the partners in this room are part of that. Well, we're really looking at across Delaware land conservation strategies and how we increase funding to protect land in Delaware, recognizing that But part of what we're recognizing especially is that as sea level rise occurs, many of those public lands that are up and down the Delaware Bay shore are going to be lost. They're going to have to adjust themselves. And as I mentioned, one of the big focuses of our policy work is kind of improving our outcomes, working with agriculture. In particular, it's thinking about how do we better find solutions to incentivize farmers and make them part of a solution of allowing these coastal communities to adjust. Many of the current programs that USDA employs they don't necessarily take into account the changing nature of sea level rise. They're a bit challenging to work with sometimes because they're somewhat static. So how do we really work to make those programs work a little better with our agricultural communities and be able to incentivize farmers to become part of the solution? I think that was my last one. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Keith. Questions or comments for Keith regarding the Nature Conservancy's efforts? I liked how you had that organized. Any in the room? Nothing. What about online? So I was curious, you mentioned the roadmap. Who are some of the partners that are all involved with developing that?
Well, we have a lot of partners from DNREC, the federal agencies, Fish and Wildlife, Sea Grant, but we're also engaging local communities like some of those, Bethany Beach, Slaughter Beach, those other communities up and down the Bay Shore to be part of that process as well. And we're doing it through two kind of processes. One is these workshops that are typically focused on state and federal partners, nonprofit conservation partners. And then we're doing more small group one-on-one meetings that go out and meet with the local communities. We're trying to, not everyone that lives in a local community has time on a Monday to go to a workshop. So we're trying to meet them on their time.
Yeah, go to them. That's a good idea. I'm interested to see that. We got a question. So are people still available to attend with your workshop next Monday?
I'm not the right one to ask that, boy.
If you wouldn't mind maybe following up, if it's something that people are able to attend, we could share that information out.
Yeah, share that
information by
information.
invitation, or people who have already been engaged in the process, we can certainly convey that as well, and maybe future opportunities to get a part of that conversation.
Yeah, if information shared with me, Will Helt, who is our Director of Oceans and Coasts in Delaware, is the person that is leading that whole process. I know this workshop is by invitation and it's set right now.
Okay.
But there are other opportunities to engage. So if someone is interested.
I know I've communicated with Will before, but would you mind maybe dropping his contact information into the chat? And then if folks are interested in learning more about the roadmap, they can follow up with him directly.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you so much, Keith. I appreciate it. So next we're moving forward, and we're going to have Andrew Martin with Delaware Wildlands. And I believe Andrew is in the room.
I do not think so.
No, wait, maybe he's online. I've checked my participant list here. All right, so we'll skip over Andrew, see if he arrives here before the end of the meeting. What about Mark Chura with the Sussex County?
He is here.
Sussex County Land Trust. So Mark Chura is the executive director of that organization. And I know I'm interested in learning about this group because I've not had any opportunities interact with them yet.
Good morning, is there
There is this,
I need to know, so.
the legal laws. And you stand right here, just kind of pick you up.
Okay, oh, great. And then, do you have a presentation with it? Good. Keith, how are you?
But this is the PDF, so, you just kind of scroll down.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Nice to see you all. So my name is Mark Scher. I'm the, as mentioned, the Executive Director of the Sussex County Land Trust. Land Trust has been around for about 20 years. We're a 501(c)(3) conservation entity. I'm going to talk through some of our projects and our programs in 2024. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Let's see if I can figure out how to work this and where we are from the morning. Okay, so it's a bit of a camp presentation we've done with some of our community groups out there. And as we go along, I'm happy to stop and answer any questions that you may have. How many of you know about our land trust as an entity, by the way? Okay, good. Hopefully that's good. So as I mentioned, I'll try to do this so you can see me. Oh, right here. We were formed in 2001, and our focus is really statewide, which is a bit challenging for a land trust. Is I think some of you know, land trusts nationally tend to be more narrowly focused on specific areas. We were charged to take on a whole county and a big one at that. So what we do try to do is focus within that in certain areas of the county, and we're kind of working through strategies in regards to that. I'll speak to that a little bit. So as everyone else does, we partner with a lot of different folks. Sussex County Council, we're unique in that we do have 2 members of council on our board. That was created early on, and they're ex officio. But we do have, we partner with state, federal agencies, and with nonprofits. Over the years, we've been involved with about 6,000 acres of ag and natural resource lands that have been protected. These are the list of the properties that we have. Some of them, as you know, are fee simple, some are in conservation easement, some are in partnership with the county where we are managing the property. Some of the last ones you may have read about, we enforced the Broad Kill is about 300 acres. That is our largest property that is on England's Branch, just outside of Milton, and where we actually, part of that has a forestry easement on it. The county has fee simple ownership. We have a conservation easement on another piece, and then we have a management agreement with the county on the entire parcel. So what we've been doing recently to acquire land has been looking to funders to do the fee simple part. We take on the conservation easement, and we're managing the property. We're kind of a de facto or emerging de facto county parks and preserves system. As you know, Sussex County does not have that. I just love that at our Hudson Park out on Route 9, and we have folks over there. And so gradually over the next couple of years, you're going to see these properties open for public use. So we talk a little bit about some of our more active properties here. There's 5 of them. This is a map. You've probably seen different versions of this over the years that really speak to lands that are protected. It's hard to see it at this level, but it does pinpoint where our properties are relative to other protected lands, which are in green, and developed areas which are in red. It's a discussion in and of itself. Hudson Park, that's Hudson Park, that's right off of Route 9, halfway between Lewis and Georgetown. And it was acquired, as you can see here, it's largely a field with a wooded edge that drops down into a small stream to your right. To the left, you'll see a little road coming parallel to Route 9. Route 9 is all the way over to the left. That's part of the old railroad line, from Lewis to Georgetown, and that's been incorporated as part of our park. That is, we have a small trailhead there, and from that trailhead, you ride down the old portion of the rail line, which will then take you to the major trailway from Lewis to Georgetown. So from this point now, you can actually go all the way to Hope on the trail system. And that shows a master plan that we've done. We're foresting certain areas of this property, and we're doing that kind of across the board right now with a number of our properties. Working with the Department of Ag primarily to do some major swaths of reforestation and ecological restoration. This one, we have a small parking area with access to the trailhead. Also showing a small trail that kind of runs through the area, yet to be built, single track trail for bikes and for hiking to be built.
How big?
The property's 39 acres. This is what's been completed to date. If you go out there, you see the small parking area and connection to the trail system. This is the next phase, which will include restrooms. And then in the last phase, you see in the red area here, we're working with the Rotary clubs across the county to develop what's called a can-do playground. There's several of those that are familiar with Alabama's One State Park, we've been that way. That's a major, that was the first one that was done. When my dad, as I was leaving, that was the first one coming back and doing this one now with the Rotaries and Sussex. So that's, that's a playground that's designed for children of all levels of ability. So they're very expensive because the surface is like a poured in place rubberized surface, and all the equipment there is accessible regardless of level of disability. So we expect it to be heavily used. Another property is on the western side of the county, the Nantucket River. You can see there that the Woodland Ferry is in your picture, kind of to the left center. This is 40 acres that we recently acquired. It's one of two properties that we're hoping that, as I think a lot of you know, there's a lot of land protected along the Nantucket that's owned by the state. There's still a couple of landowners there that have been holdouts for years that will complete that corridor, if you will. These are a couple of big donut holes. This is a 40-acre piece that had an interesting history. It was both a mobile home community and it was planned for a subdivision. The prior owner cleared and removed the mobile home community, found that it was really, we didn't want to build on it, and decided that it was better suited to be protected. So we've been working with Chesapeake Conservancy, the Navy, Fish and Wildlife, and acquiring this and having easements on the property. We've also done a master plan for the property. Happy to share it another time, but we do this with all of our properties. And we're again, like Hudson, just working on getting that open for public use. Igford Park, Litchfield Williams, this is dealing with our mandate of protecting cultural resources. The two homes that you see here, it's about 56 acres or so that we have in the bottom left. That's the Cannon Maston House. It dates back to the early 1700s. The oldest, I'm told, brick structure in Sussex County. It's also architecturally really important. We're having a lot of folks look at the architectural details now, but from a cultural resource standpoint, very important property building. Above that, you see a little white building that's in a little square there off the road. That's the Litchfield Williams house, dates back to 1912. We're in the process of restoring that right now. Our goal here is to interpret Sussex County agricultural history, and to do that in two periods. One in the early 1720s, when this was really considered Maryland, not Delaware. And then in the early 1900s, there's a lot of truck farming that went on in this portion of the county as well. there's a lot of good history on this that we have details, and this is also on the historic register. This is just a picture. This had a lot of work that had to be done to it. It had been neglected for a number of decades, but the original owner actually was fairly wealthy, and for its time, 1912, was really constructed well. So good bones and bringing back the house to what it was. This one again, same thing. This was owned by the Cannon family. A long history here that we have documented, and we've been working with some good folks from an architectural historian standpoint that are giving us good plans to rebuild this as it was in the 1720s. Moving on now, Hopkins Preserve, that's again on the eastern side of the county on Route 9. You go to Hopkins Dairy, you guys have been to the ice cream place there, the Hopkins own a lot of land. They have well over 1,000 acres of agricultural land, 60 acres of that, which was pasture land. It was purchased by the county. We hold an easement on it. We raised money for design of this. We are bringing this, we're calling it a preserve. This is our intent, is to both reforest the property. This historically had a lot of wetlands on it that have been farmed over the years and managed, as farmland. And now that we're letting that go fallow, but we're managing this in coordination with the county to create kind of varied habitat. Here we'll have forest, we'll have some grasslands in here, we'll have wetlands in here as well. So this is a work in progress. We hope to start construction on this in the fall. And in conjunction with that, this just shows we're working with the Masonic Lodge. Walt Hopkins actually donated 7 acres for the lodge. They are our partners on this property. So some details here. As I said, we're hoping to have this open next year for the public. Forest of the Broadkill, as I said, about 300 acres. I talked a little bit about how that is kind of a combination of ownership with Department of Ag, with Forestry, and the county. 3 parcels here you see, that's off the Sussex County tax parcel maps. Running along Ingham's Branch, the nice stand of white cedars on this property. There's like a half dozen of them on the road of substantial size. Some nice, some quality habitat in there. We're going to go in and do some survey. I asked our friend Bill McAvoy to go out and take a look and see what we have. But this Ingham's Branch is really beautiful. This was, I mentioned, it was law since fortunately had an easement on it. So we do have existing trails that were put in place to help the timber management. When you see the slide to the right, it's hard to see here, but it's a really large beach. We have some nice mature trees in different sections that went along. Our goal here is to bring all this back and we'll manage forest so we can take this from a pine plantation to something much more diverse. We're also looking at opportunities here to restore quail habitat, working with the federal government to see how we can do that in sections that have been previously cleared. A couple of slides of that. Arctic Grand is our most ambitious project. This is 89 acres just outside the city limits of Lewis, and it's part of a strategy that we're looking at creating an open space corridor of land between Lewis and Georgetown along that rail line. Hopkins and the Hudson pieces were the first 2 in that effort. This will be the 3rd. This is right off of New Road. It's hard to see this, and you're peering to the left off New Road. That's all that open field behind New Road. It's pretty substantial. Ebenezer Branch flows into Canary Creek, which flows into the Great Marsh. You can see that picture to the right. Down there, it's been historic. It's one of the last big ag farms, really, in this portion of the county that's not owned like by the state. Fortunately, in this case, the owners they do not have heirs, but they're a 3rd generation agricultural farm family, and they want to see it permanently protected. So they're working with us to make that happen. It ain't cheap, it's $8.5 million. So, the good news is we're not having to fight off developers at the moment to acquire it. But, we have enough to climb. We're making good progress. But our intent here is to keep some of this in ag, and again, to diversify the habitat, reforest the edges, and do a little bit with the alder fragments along Canary Creek. Remnants of, there's a 1950s farmhouse there, remnants of the barn, 8.5 million, as I mentioned, and again, we'll do a master plan. This is our open space corridor planning I mentioned. We have Artie Graham, and we've shown this along the corridor, along the rail trail corridor. The green you see here is the rail trail. Artie Graham is the B here. A is another piece, the Fourth Street Forest that folks are working on, the Greater Lewis Foundation to acquire. As you come down, you see D in the upper left, that's Hopkins, and on the trail. And this one, D is up in the right-hand corner, E is Hudson Park, and then what you see in blue in this slide and this slide, and a little bit of yellow are areas to the west going to Georgetown that we're looking to see if we can even get an easement on to acquire the center. And that's a little bit of our planning here. Again, the spine to that is the trail going from Lewis to Georgetown. And we did a couple of slides just so you may be familiar with this, you may not be. But these are trying to acquire land and open space in Sussex County is not easy given the prices, but we work with a lot of business partners to fund acquisitions, through donations. The council has stepped up with 11 million. This is over 2020 through the end of 2023. And then at the state level, we got 31 million, excuse me, that's been spent. Largely in Sussex and Newcastle County, one large acquisition in particular, but you see the breakdown, and then between western and eastern Sussex and acres protected through that whole thing. So that's my story. I know you've got a long meeting, so thank you for indulging me. Do you have any questions about what we're doing or what we're not doing? Yeah.
Wasn't this started by developers trying to?
Well, that's the story. That's not
The
fair.
story, is that real or is it?
Well, that's like people who like to take shots at the trust. But the fact is, that's not the case.
Okay, I was curious, because that's why I was back in 2001, too, that's why I was.
It's unfortunate. I don't know where you're coming from on that, but it's, you know, we have people from attorneys over time. There are folks that in the development community saw the need for this. But it has always been, and it remains a 501(c)(3), that's a conservation entity.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Just curious about that.
When you're designing and implementing these trail systems and these parks, are you working with the local communities to kind of listen to what their needs or wants are for these public spaces? And then in addition to that, are you doing like a more naturalized trail system, or are you also creating like ADA accessible trails? It's just more of like curiosity.
Kind of yes on all those points.
Okay.
And it's challenging because there's a need for active recreation in Sussex County.
Mhm.
And with the Can-Do playground, that's a big piece. You know, I grew up in Newcastle County, and they have a whole county park rec system. And as I've come to learn, they have 250 parks in Newcastle County. And that's a legacy of the 60s and the 70s and 80s, when the subdivision would be approved, the county would take it on the open space. And then they turned around one day and said, we have 250 parks. What are we doing? We have the opposite here, where we have really no true county park and rec system. So it's a balance for us, because we're not a government entity. It gets back to operating.
Yeah.
You know, and how do you fund these things? The Delaware Botanic Gardens is actually a property that's owned by the trust, and we partnered with Botanic Gardens, and so they're managing that. Our intent is to, of our properties, is to manage them for their ecological diversity. And we do try to provide, like I said, the access, the trail access is a nice link for us. You know, trying to create true wildlife corridors in this portion of Sussex County is virtually impossible. Just can't do it all at this point. You know, all you can really hope to do is to try to tie things logically together and provide some ability for folks to get on a bike or hike across the county. And that's what these are. We generally try to have a trailhead, a small trail, and an interpretation. Candy playground's a bit of an outlier, but that's what we're doing. The other thing, in answer to your question, we haven't held like formal master plan meetings. We have had opportunities for people to talk. Fortunately, the Block Hill, there's opportunities there. If you look at Sussex County and you look at mountain biking or even having single track trails, there's a little bit in Cape Helena. Other than that, it doesn't exist down here. You cannot mountain bike really in Sussex County. And we have plenty of land to do that. So our intent is in that forested land, as we're transitioning from a pine plantation, to also put in a bike trail system for mountain biking. And that meets a need that we know through SCORP what some of the things that are missing, and we hope to fulfill some of that. But again, we're not a county parking and rec agency, so it's a tough balance.
I find that funny, because I hear, I'm the property manager at James,
Yes.
which is a county-owned property.
Yes.
And I hear that often, is that Sussex County is not in the Parks Department. Apparently they are in the Parks Department.
They are quietly. They won't admit to it either.
But they won't. But the maintenance on it, I mean, we have a yearly request at the James Farm.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
What we
through the
do-
individual properties or?
We've been working to develop kind of a sustainable set of operating monies through the grant aid and what have you, but in the interim, what we're doing is, before we acquire a property, we self-fund 5 years of operations. And that's part of the deal. So as we've been getting donations in, we're using that. And I want to get back to the other tough balance in there. It was, getting back to your question, we get a lot of, the trust did have, Preston Shell and Greg Hudson were very prominent early on. They're long since gone. But the question always becomes, how do you work with the development community? In this case, we've had really good support from Ocean Land and Shell Brothers. They, for every house they sell, they give us $1,000. And that goes into our operating budgets. That goes into land acquisition. It goes into improvements. It would be nice if we could get more of a balanced set of money out of other sources, but it's a real problem because, when you're relying on public sources, everyone can take, they have impressions, there's no question, Chevrolet is not the most popular, because they try to do a lot. They're friends of mine, they do their thing, we do our thing, but, you don't want to be dependent on those funding sources. You really want to be able to have, to your point, I think, you don't want to be struggling with your operating monies from year to year. And as we develop this more, kind of like you, it's how do we sustain that, make sure we're sustaining it. It's not easy, and it's a big gap. Yeah.
Could you just go back to that map that showed the location of Hawkins Preserve?
Sure.
Thank you.
Want to do that? Is that one?
Or I guess just,
Where
I'm
is
trying
it?
to find it on.
I'll go back to that order thing. Yeah. Okay, that's D, it's right there. It's D. Okay. So that is, do you know what that is?
I hopefully can find it. I'm a bit new to the county.
Okay, so if you're going to Georgetown on Route 9, what you're gonna see as you're going, actually, the easiest thing is look for the big dairy bar with the ice cream on it. That's Hawkins Dairy. You can't, that's a landmark.
And stop for ice.
Stop for ice cream. It's actually really good. He no longer has his cows there, but.
Oh, he has 3.
There's 3.
Oh, that's fair. He doesn't have to herd it. You're right, there's a couple there that pack. But this is land, Hopkins Dairy is kind of, the yellow and blue is the road, and then the line is in green, so you have to take a right, where the dairy barn is to get to Hopkins.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you all, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mark. Sure. So any sign of Andrew Martin? I don't think he's joined Zoom room. Okay, well, and that is absolutely fine. We'll catch up with Delaware Wildlands at a future date. That leaves us the last 15 minutes to really share, for those of you who are left from other organizations, to hear a kind of a high level overview, right, Megan, of the center's plan of work. What do you call it?
Work plan.
Work plan, thank you. So this is for their next fiscal year. And often the STAC is assigned a couple of tasks within that. So Megan's gonna go over that for us. It has been attached to the meeting announcement with the agenda. So hopefully folks took a minute or two to open that up and check out what's in the work plan. But Megan, go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. Thank you very much. For those of you who are NAPs, perhaps you don't have to go through an annual work planning process, but we do this. It is public comment. It's commented by our staff. And then I think we give it to be a June 1st-ish timeframe. So there's still plenty of time. We did a short summary for you, but then on a meeting invite, there's a full summary. So get those comments back to me pretty soon, if possible. Normally Christoph would be here, but he had another engagement this morning. He was speaking at Arbor Day at Hudson Field. So it got very confusing and get very busy, but we'll start kind of at the end of the project, work plan highlights, as Connie mentioned, the oyster gardening program in the Inland Bays was put on hiatus last year. We took a look at it, the goals of the oyster gardening program were all met. We didn't really have a natural next steps for them. And so we sort of put that on hold. We said, okay, we'll pause this as we focus on our oyster reef building project, which if you've been around and you talked to Andrew, you know that we've been waiting for years for our permit, and that finally came through. So we'll be focusing this year on building our oyster reef. Hopefully using those same volunteers to come out and help us get that off the ground. And that next oyster reef will be at Pasture Point. Our land preservation continues, and we continue to have conversations, and unfortunately the Heron Creek Preserve one hit just one too many roadblocks, and so we redirected our efforts to some more potential gains. Saltmarsh enhancement is really a highlight of this upcoming year. As you know, we had the Living Shoreline document in 2016, which identified some projects for us to take on and lead to demonstrate the benefits of living shorelines within the Inland Bays. And the Saltmarsh Enhancement Program is sort of that next step, demonstrates the benefits of enhancing our salt marshes. So we're doing this in a number of ways, but we received a grant from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation to build a Southern Delaware Coastal Resilience Plan. So for all of you who wanted to join into Will's closed door session meeting on Monday, send us an email. Melina will be kicking off that effort this summer, specifically for the Inland Bays region. And there's going to be a huge focus on our marshes. Also, kind of a high point in the science department is the Diamondback Terrapin Survey program. We started this a number of years ago. No one really knew very much about diamondback terrapins in the inland bays. We didn't know where they were, we didn't know how many there were. So this was a pilot study just to figure out some of those basic questions. And we are now partnering with estuaries and marshes across the Northeast to develop species distribution through participatory science programs. I liked how Lisa put it, tier 3 participatory science. We're really looking for that high level data that will help inform what the diamondback terrapins are doing. And like many of you are working with your communities, engaging them, answering those questions that they have about making the right choices for their neighborhoods. Our education department is working with the organized communities to bring awareness to them about what kind of practices they can implement on their community grounds. So these are communities that have communal land that they are trying to bring better practices and promote healthy partnerships. And I think Rich Watson, his community is the first one that we're going to be working with. So STAC is going to be intimately familiar with this project. And then we didn't quite make our work plan, and we kind of went back and forth 3 or 4 times. We have all these ongoing projects, but a real bright spot, I hope, in 2025 is that we really expand our watershed reforestation and meadows program. So Michelle's group will be leading an effort to work with communities in understanding their expired drain fields. So again, Michelle's group kind of convinced Sussex County to disconnect their septic fields and bring them more into a communal wastewater treatment plant, which will go great things for reducing our nitrogen load into the bays. But now what do we do with those drain fields that those communities don't need anymore? And so we worked with Chapel Green in Lewis. This was our first demonstration project. They kind of came to us and said, hey, we don't want this to go into anything other than the natural area. So a lot of those issues about how communities react to extra tall vegetation and spring sticks, they were already there. So thank goodness. But we have 2 more communities that have approached us. And so Michelle's group is going to be leading an effort to really figure out across Sussex County where these efforts will be. And they are including meadows as well as reforestations. So anything else to add, Michelle, from our plan highlights for 2025?
I think that's about it.
It always seems overwhelming because it's not like we toss the other things off the list.
It's always an addition.
There's always additions.
Except for those 2.
Well, yeah. Okay.
Thank you. But any other comments or feedback from folks in the room or online? Yeah, I see a hand raised.
Yeah.
One of the things that I talked about in our presentation was the stranded spawning bush crab recovery team. And that's a volunteer program that has really shown a lot of success in the last 2 years, and this will be our 3rd summer doing it. I've had people who live up in Delaware reach out to me expressing interest in our program, and I was wondering if this is a community initiative that you would want to start doing as well.
We have Marine.
Okay.
Taylor, right? They're actually located around the corner from here, and they are responsible for all of the marine mammal and horseshoe crab rescues.
Okay.
So
yeah.
I think we need to do a better job of pointing that out to them and pointing that out to the people who call us.
Yeah.
And Nivette, who runs our community science horseshoe crab program, has been working really closely with them to get those permits in place so that Merck can expand throughout the whole bays.
Awesome, yeah.
Because people will go, oh, well, that's just in Lewis, but no, they actually do the whole
Very
down
good.
to the county.
If I could get the contact information, just so like when I do have people reach out in the Delaware area, because I'm like, yeah, you can come down to Maryland, but also Delaware has a ton of horseshoe crabs, and if you're already up there, you might as well help them out too. But that way I can just communicate and let people know like, hey, there actually is something that you can do up where you're at. That'd be really great. Awesome.
It's great. I love hearing those type of connections. Any other comments or questions?
If we're okay, I have two announcements that I forgot to mention at the beginning.
Yes, absolutely. And I was then going to open it up to anybody else having announcements or information they want to share briefly.
So the center has a bunch of upcoming activities, which are, expand from science through education. But probably most excitingly, we have the Denrac Center coordinated Water Family Fun Fest and native plant sale. That is May 4th, so apparently that's your day to buy native plants. So come to us and then go up to Alex 4. And then also the center is currently seeking applicants for an intern / shellfish program manager to continue with our program with oyster reefs and help build, help form our communication lines with the aquaculture program. So this is an open rolling application process. So please, if you have anybody that's interested in a summer work, but also to really have that deep dive right into the Inland Bays aquaculture and oyster program, have them give us.
And if you know anywhere to post this flyer, feel free to take it with you, or I can send it to you online as well.
That's it for me, Jen. Oh, Yvette has her hand up.
Yvette, what would you like to share?
It was mentioned in the introduction. I was a little late, but we are also having a flower planting at the Stockley Center on May 11, and we still have volunteer spots available. So if the Stockley Center is located in Georgetown, so if anybody's interested or just share with your networks, we'll be happy to see you there.
Yvette, I shared that with our Sussex County Master Gardeners. So hopefully you'll get some folks through them or their further distribution.
That will be awesome. Thank you.
Any other announcements from folks in the room or online? Okay, hearing none, I want to thank all of our speakers. Maybe we'll give a quick round of applause for those in the room. Oh, Megan, sorry. Have one?
Sorry, Jen, Bob Collins. I just wanted to mention that we had our project initiation meeting at the James Farm this week. So we'll be off and running very shortly. As we were sitting here today, had our first change order. We're looking forward to getting started on the campus project at the James Farm.
Good to hear. Okay, with that, I want to give all of our speakers a round of applause and thank them all for coming and sharing with us today. Yes, thank you, thank you. I think we've made some good connections. We'll get some meeting minutes out as soon as we can, along with some of the resources dropped into the chat. Our next meeting is scheduled for Friday, August 9th from 9 to 12, and that one is scheduled to be completely virtual because summertime, Friday, we don't want to deal with traffic in the beach. So hope everyone has a great Friday, a great weekend, and I will see you soon, hopefully before we see you in August at our next STAC meeting. Have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you.
Well, I really recognize you.